Welcome to the XY Advisor Podcast, a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice. To get involved, go to xyadvisor.com or simply download the XY Advisor app. Hub24 is on a mission to empower advisors to deliver better financial futures for their clients. They are dedicated to customer service excellence and delivering innovative product solutions that create value for advisors and their clients. These are just some of the reasons why advisors rate them number one for overall satisfaction and why their managed portfolio solution has been rated best in market 5 years running. Hub24 believes nothing happens in isolation. So they're working together with advisors, licensees, and industry leaders to leverage their data and technology expertise to help solve key challenges in the delivery of financial advice, so more Australians can access cost-effective advice. Welcome back to the XY Advisor Podcast. I'm Fraser Jack, and today I am joined by Neil Rogan, who is the Head of Wholesale Partnerships at Russell Investment. Welcome, Neil.
Thanks, Fraser. It's great to be here today.
Fantastic to chat to you. Now, I've been quite excited with some of the stuff that's been coming out of Russell, the actual value of advice report that was recently released, and I figured that we should definitely chat about it. But before we get stuck into that, tell us quickly about you and what your role contains.
Thanks, Fraser. Well, my role at Russell as Head of Wholesale Partnerships is really to assist licensees, advisors, and platforms with their investment solutions. But in addition to that, Russell as a global company has a raft of practice management solutions, and one of those solutions includes this report, which we've been doing for over 4 years in Australia, and it's really something we're incredibly proud of in terms of supporting advisors and their clients and the broader advice industry.
Yep, fantastic. Now, it's obviously, as you mentioned, 4 years in through doing this report and releasing it every year. And it's fascinating, isn't it, when you've been doing something for 4 years and you start seeing the results come in. And you're right. This is something that I've heard and have spoken about many times in the past, which is, what is the tangible amount of money or percentage that a financial advisor or financial planner can provide by advising clients?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing the rise of, what I would call many armchair experts outside of our financial planning industry. And, it'd be really great to have some of them actually join the industry as part of our succession and go through the qualifications and the exams and everything that our financial advisors go through. But what we've tried to do in this report is really help advisors and their clients articulate the qualitative and the quantitative value that advisors provide. And that ranges from everything to the peace of mind, or what I would call the sleep at night test that clients get, all the way through to ensuring you've got the correct asset allocation. And what we found on an annual basis, that actually seeking effective financial planning advice leads to about a 5.2% return over the lifetime of a client, which is around 20 to 25 years.
Yeah, now this is really interesting. So this is not just a 5.2% return. This is an additional 5.2% return, isn't it?
That's right.
So if we take a step back and look, obviously this is, the fourth year of the report. Tell us about that history. Tell us about has there been any changes over that time?
There have been changes in the figure, and that's really in relation to a couple of things. Firstly, it's in relation to the tax and the opportunities that exist around tax rates and tax advantages through the superannuation scheme, and clearly around asset allocation and markets. But if you look at around behaviours and how clients allocate to cash, those things have remained relatively stable over the last 4 years, and the percentage amount has remained, somewhere between, 4.9 and, what are we at today? 5.2,
Yep.
5.2% over that period. I think the other point for us is that we don't have a business without the support of the advisors at a global level. And therefore, this type of report is something we do at a global level, and we apply the figure and also the various behaviours and attributes at a local level. So I like to say we're a global company. We have global frameworks that we apply locally for the benefit of our clients and their advisors.
I love a good made-up word, glocal.
Nothing like the creation of a noun.
Yeah, why not? Oh, that's how podcast was created. 2 words put together. Hey, let's go to the study behind it, because it's good to have a report, but we also want to know about the numbers behind it. And I'm looking here that there was about 8,000 individuals from a size of a study. As you mentioned before, you've got global research as well as regional and local data. Tell us about the actual study itself.
Yep. So we use local data and data that we have based on the magnitude of our advised clients, and we use that data to determine these numbers. And that's why you're seeing things like the expertise that we say that's actually priceless, because you can't put a figure on the education, the engagement, the efficiency, and the enrichment that the financial planner's expertise adds to their clients' lives.
Yeah, I think that within the expertise, and we'll get into those particular areas, or those principles in a moment. But there is an area there that you talk about expertise, and we'll sort of get to it there. But I think a lot of it is around that emotional, trying to find some tangible emotional growth, which I'm keen to get stuck into. So just when I look at the paper itself and I look at the report, it's fairly clearly broken up into sort of 5 sections. Our 5.2% is made up of 5 different areas, and I think probably the best thing to do is to go through all those. But before we do, it's sort of set out as A, B, C, E, and T. Let's just quickly go through what that A, B, C, E, and T are.
Yep. So, A is not really for Apple as we teach our children. It's actually for asset allocation and ensuring that, the asset allocation matches the client's life stage, and also matches the client's propensity or risk profile. B is around a range of behaviours, and there are a number of behaviours, and we'll go into these. I find this and the expertise 2 of the most fascinating things around financial advice, and I think most advisors would find those things probably the most fascinating. C is for cash, and really around how you optimise what you're holding in cash. So that's the A, B, C. We don't have a D at the moment, but I would like us to have one day. And then
We'll make
E
up a
is
new
for
word.
the X. Yeah, that's right. We'll create one. We've got a G now. E is for expertise, and the expertise that advisors bring to the party. And then T is for tax, and that's really around the tax efficiency of how portfolios are managed, but also taking advantage of certain tax benefits that may exist within the structures for various types of clients. And that ranges from everything from the various government allowances that are available for retirees, for people in aged care, all the way through to childcare allowances and those kinds of things.
Yeah. Now, tax is a big area. We'll get to that, obviously. If it was just tax deductions, then there's your D. You could have slipped it in between, but tax is a bigger section than just deductions. let's kick it off. Let's start with the A, appropriate asset allocation. I better make sure I get that word out, and that's something that we're contributing to 1.1% better off by consumers or clients having or knowing that they're in the correct asset allocation.
Yeah, I think this is a fairly fundamental piece of financial planning. And certainly when I joined the industry many decades ago, it was a rule of, subtracting your age away from 100, and that portion of assets would go into growth assets, and the remainder would go into more conservative assets. Um, But now there's more of a blend of art and science into determining risk profiles, which sits around what client preferences are, um, how long they're wanting to work for, what their current age is, and so really ensuring that you're in the appropriate asset allocation that's aligned to your goals and objectives, rather than potentially selecting the default. Um, can lead to a 1.1% difference, which is in a very low return environment for cash at the moment. 1.1% is potentially higher than the effective cash rate that we have today.
Yep. Now, you mentioned the concept of, the understanding, the consumer understanding, or the knowledge gap that comes into that. How important is that? The fact that, it feels to me like a big chunk of this is around consumers not really being engaged with their asset allocation because they're just not knowing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and where the advisor can make a difference is really actually sitting down with the client, and having a conversation about what risk is, and understanding their various risk tolerances and those kinds of things. I think most people would think, and there's a study that shows this, that most people who are in, say, the Gen Y age group want their superannuation savings in a guaranteed option. And is that really the best thing that they should be doing what's Gen Y, 25 to 35-year-old, when potentially they've got 20 or 30 years of work ahead of them? And so having those kinds of conversations and making the various trade-offs around having a portion maybe in a guaranteed option, and a larger amount in growth your assets and those kinds of things is a worthy discussion.
Yeah, it certainly is, and if you're putting a number on it, because I think it's hard for that generation to understand that paying a financial advisor, a decent fee will return them such a benefit, but actually having that number and then to be able to quantify that over their life, life expectancy, or their amount of time they have left between now and when they retire, or between now and when they're likely to engage a financial advisor, is probably an interesting conversation for advisors to lean into having these conversations with younger clients.
Yeah, most definitely, because these types of clients are likely to have they've got the assets that are growing, as opposed to many clients who are, say, the baby boomer generation, who are drawing down on assets. And then you've got people like me who are in the Gen X. I call myself the sandwich generation. Younger children, school fees, and older parents. And so we've got school fees for our kids, but also the thought of long-term aged care for the likes of our parents. And again, asset allocation is important for people like myself, who are thinking about those kinds of things, and how you can walk the tightrope and balance both.
Yep, fantastic. Yeah, I don't think there's any argument amongst our audience here with financial advisors thinking that asset allocation is important. Clearly, they know this, but I think it's really just good to have that number, that 1.1%, to be able to add to their conversations, their marketing, their whatever it might be. And I think this report certainly provides the evidence behind that. So that, appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into the B. The B. So we're talking about, as you mentioned before, a bit of a behavioural, but there's a bit of behavioural science and behavioural coaching, behavioural aspects of this, which I really like. And I think you and I could probably talk about this for a long period of time. So let's get into that. We've got a 2% number on the behavioural coaching side of it. Talk us through that.
Yep. So we've determined a 2% figure here, which is really a behavioural economic figure. But I think more broadly, the role that a financial advisor plays in this space is really what I would call saving people from themselves. And so so being able to actually buy when assets are priced appropriately and sell at the right time is really, really important. And one of the things many people do, and this is the study that we've done, I think in the report, we talk about some analysis that we've done from 1984 all the way through to 2021. And it's around staying invested over that period of time. So it's quite a 36-year period, probably almost older than me, Fraser, this study. But what it what it does do is demonstrates the value of being invested over a long period of time, and not actually. And what the phrase I'd use here is actually holding your nerve. And what a lot of financial advisors do, and do really, really well, is assist people in holding their nerve when times aren't so good. So I love a good example. I think a great example would be something like Afterpay. So as a share, Afterpay in March of last year, I think may have been at $9 or $10 or something like that. And so if I'd have bought Afterpay in December of 2019 and I get to March 2020 and Afterpay gets to $9 and I sell out, Afterpay today is trading at, I don't know, $120. So it's trading at $120. So I've stayed in. I've had my conversation with my financial advisor and stayed in the market. Well, I've made a significant benefit over that period of time. And I think that's a great example of looking at the fundamentals of where you're invested, what you're invested in, making sure it's aligned again to your goals and objectives, and sticking to your strategy.
Yeah, I think we've all seen the diagram when we talk about the emotional investor versus the practical, or when is the best time to invest, and when does everybody want to invest or feel like they need to get out. Everybody sort of feels like they want to sell out at the bottom of the market, and they feel like they want to buy in at the top. And we know that's the opposite. Talk to us about, obviously, because I think sort of COVID's a really good example that advisors can talk about. I think what happened in March 2020 with markets dropping, dropping off a cliff, and then the rebound is a really recent example for people to really to bring home when it comes to that conversation of when to buy and when to sell.
Oh, most definitely. And if we look at the increase even in first-time investors from March last year all the way through to this year, I think there are close to 700,000 more investors who've actually purchased shares. So I think there was around 1.6 million people who had shares, and that has increased by another 700,000 over that period.
I was going to say that's a very, very sharp increase.
Yeah. So we've seen, people, of all ages sitting at home, doing their own research and getting into the market. But again, these first-time investors, many of them, are getting into areas potentially that they may or may not understand, and are probably more driven by the emotional side, as you say, driven by the emotions rather than a blend of both the emotions and the fundamentals around what drives markets, what aligns to your goals, and how do you sell at the right time and buy at the right time?
Yeah, certainly around that fear of missing out because they're jumping in as markets have already gone through their growth spurt. Talk to me about the emotional, the behavioural coaching side of because I would have thought that 2% would be extremely higher for advisors who talk their clients out of taking the $10,000 out of super at the moment when it was markets were low.
Yeah, and I mean this is really an average. There may be some where it's significantly higher, and there may be others where it's potentially in negative territory. For someone like me, I'm probably a financial advisor's worst nightmare because I'm an opportunist. So I would be I would be the kind of person who would be jumping onto everything, with the exception of maybe crypto because I don't understand it. But I'm happy to learn about it. But certainly someone like myself, I need to be saved from myself. And so I think my number personally would actually be probably quite a lot higher because um, I'm likely to probably buy at the wrong time and sell at the wrong time because being an opportunist and also being potentially slightly emotional about where markets are at and where things are at, and reading the headlines. Firstly, people sometimes like me don't want to miss out and therefore will potentially sell at the wrong time and then buy at the wrong time. And we only have to look at the headlines at the moment about housing in every capital city and every regional town in Australia to see that some people would think it's easier to sit at home and just buy houses, and they would earn more money than actually having the prudence of working and saving and building a future retirement.
Yeah, it's, I think of some of that messaging is also within the media and within there's a lot of messaging out there, I guess, when it comes to what's available, and there's a lot of hype. And but yeah, I think this section of behaviors is a super important part, and that sort of, as we sort of mentioned, the first part about the asset allocation was 1.1. The behavioral coaching is around 2. It takes up to 3.1 already. Better off over a longer period of time, and just going back to this study. Of course, this is a lot of over a longer period of time study, isn't it?
Yep. And what you can't take away from this behavioral piece is the value of having someone, what I would say, keeping you honest with what you're wanting to do. And I know of many people who wouldn't buy a car or go on a holiday or do anything without consulting their financial advisor first. And I think those types of relationships are those that those financial advisors have with their clients and continue to have with their clients, are really, really deep and aligned to the financial advisor has worked closely with that client to understand their behaviors, their motivations, and really be their guide in all markets and at all times.
Yep. I was going to say I behave better when I've got my accountability buddy next to me or keeping me honest. So I think that's you've hit the nail on the head there with regards to having somebody to bounce those decisions off. So fantastic. That takes us through the behavioural section of the report. Let's get into the C.
Yeah, the C, which is around, really around, not holding the cost of holding too much cash, and having that money invested and working for you rather than having it allocated to cash. I could talk about this for for 15 minutes, but I don't want to say cash is boring, but it's really around how you optimize the assets that you have to invest to get the best kind of outcome that matches your risk profile. And having an over allocation to cash may not be the most appropriate thing to do. and that is also dependent on the life stage of the client as well.
Yeah, cash has been really interesting, isn't it? When it's at below inflation rates, and the real return is in the negatives. And actually, somebody posed to me the question once: does that make it a high risk asset all of a sudden? Constant losses to your portfolio.
Yeah, and not potentially aligning to your purchasing power, particularly at the moment when you know there's a threat of inflation and those kinds of things that may or may not occur, but it's really potentially sacrificing longer term returns for for the benefit of holding a higher proportion of cash.
Yeah.
But again, for retirees, there's a reason why you would hold more cash for those types of people. But for those in the accumulation phase, or those who may be 10 years or 15 years from retirement, having an over allocation to cash may not be the most appropriate thing for their client.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in the report, there's words like, the real return on cash and the real cost of cash and the cash drag.
Yes. I was going to mention the cash drag, which is it's a bit like an aeroplane flying with its wheels down. It's understanding the drag that can have on your portfolio over time.
Yep. And this sort of breaches a little bit of this is, education, but a little bit it feels like we've got a bit of an overlap with the behavioural section as well.
Oh, very much so, because, from a behavioural perspective, cash has always equaled security. We go back to the GFC in the late 2000s when, banks had the bank guarantee was introduced by the Rudd government at the time, which gave people a degree of certainty. So in many cases, from a behavioural perspective, cash equals certainty for many consumers because it's been ingrained in their minds over decades.
Yeah, so it's easy for us to diss cash, but people still like it. But I think you hit the nail on the head in the report where you talk about it being a tool.
Yes, very much so. A tool and a means to an end in some cases, where it can be used for a level of certainty for planning purposes. But then looking at how a diversified portfolio can meet both a liquidity need as well as a return objective.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, so that's pretty much cash. The percentage on cash was 0.6 of a percent. Sort of that takes us up to sort of 3.7 as the number we're up to. Let's get into the next section, which is E. E's a funny one. It comes up with the exact number of priceless.
Yep.
Talk us through this.
Well, what I would say to this is that you really can't put a value on peace of mind, and therefore, what value do you put on something like that? Where from a consumer perspective, how you can educate a client in their financial literacy so that they have more confidence in many of the things that they're doing, is really the first step in sharing that expertise. The second part is around how you engage with that client. And, research suggests that, the engagement and tracking to goals and having milestones along the way actually leads to a high level of engagement, but also a high level of education with your client. So it's a twofold piece. And then, again, the financial advisor's expertise in being able to structure things appropriately, educate a client, and then engage with a client, and there's regulations around that now anyway, so that those conversations occur. Actually making that more efficient for a client where they're not having to, research these things. They know when they can buy things, they know when they can sell things, they know when they can go on holidays. And here we're saying that, based on a client, they're saving, a financial advisor is saving at least 10 hours of a client's time. And then, so making them more efficient, and then really helping. The next one we talk about here is really enrichment, and how the report, those who get advice actually feel more enriched, and this is this peace of mind we talk about.
Yep.
And the whole sleep at night test.
Yeah, exactly right. So that's sort of if I was to summarize the four different sections there, we're talking about education, engagement, efficiency, and enrichment. I sort of also think of it as the emotional impact, and as in before the client received the advice, they were feeling, X, Y, Z, and we've taken that to a new feeling, or transformed it to a feeling of confidence, or a feeling of understanding, or security, or, as you said, peace of mind. In that transformation process, I'm super interested in this space because I love the idea of trying to quantify those from a perspective of, because we like to try and put numbers around everything. And just being able to say, if we started that, before you came in, if you were nervous or upset or worried, where are you, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you on that scale? And then maybe after the advice to be able to quantify on the scale of 1 to 10, how, nervous are you now?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You see, many clients, I think, who, and certainly I probably fit into this category, that after I've had a conversation with an advisor, I think, well, I feel so much better. I'm on track. I'm doing the right things. I've been saved from myself again in terms of making a silly mistake. And I can, my wife's happier. I know the kids are going to be okay. I know my family's protected, and I know that if anything happens to me, that they'll be okay. And I think, I can't put a percentage on that, and I don't think many people could actually put a percentage on that.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the interesting things I found in the report, that there was a little bit of a conversation around, amount of time, saving for a client. It sort of talked around the idea, by advisors doing some of the stuff, it sort of saves around 10 hours of work, 10 hours of client time from a client.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I would say that's at a minimum, Fraser, that 10 hours, because you don't know how much time people would spend actually worrying. So we haven't included in the report the amount of time, clients would spend pacing around their house, looking at news reports, thinking about things, at strange times. Often people think when they're exercising, or, in the shower, or cleaning their teeth and those kinds of things. The time spent worrying, this is more we've quantified the admin time that sits around this, but there's time that would be in your subconscious that we haven't calculated here.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and I do remember. I think when Core Data put out some stuff at one point that talked about how often people worry. It might have been like, hey, do you worry once a week, once a month, once a day type thing. So that's another interesting set of facts, but probably something that advisors can implement in their conversation or in their fact find. How much time are you spend worrying about this and this, and then to be able to go back and ask that same question after the advice, and then to be able to come up with some sort of a number that says, we've been able to save you this much time worrying as part of the value of the advice we provide.
Yep, exactly, because we're doing the worrying for you. You don't need to worry.
Fantastic. Now we might move on. I can talk about that section of the E for a long, or the experience, or the expertise section for a long period of time. Let's move on to tax. The tax, we've got a real number. We're back to 1.5% savings in tax.
Yep, that's right. So the real number here is really around an aggregate across a range of clients that sits around the implications of the marginal tax rate, particularly in the superannuation environment, which is a rate of 15% on the contributions. Then we've got around how the portfolios are managed, or the access to different types of portfolios, and then how those portfolios are managed, and also the components of those portfolios. And then finally, it's as I said earlier, it's actually what are the other benefits that clients can get access to that in many cases they don't know exist. And so for some people, there are, as we know, anyone who's done any kind of pre-retirement or retirement planning, getting the access to the PBS is like winning Willy Wonka's golden ticket and it becomes bragging rights at the bowling or the golf club that they've been able to get access to something like that from a client perspective. And in many cases, that could be worth more than 1.5% to that couple or that client over the remainder of their life. So it's really a range of things that range all the way from where the portfolio sits, the kind of assets that are in it, the kind of structure that it's in, all the way through to the benefits that a client can receive.
I love the analogy, winning Willy Wonka's golden ticket. It's kind of like a national pastime, isn't it, trying to save money on tax for people that live here in Australia?
Yeah, very much so. And I think there was a line that Kerry Packer had one day about paying tax.
There certainly was. It was along the lines of if you blokes were better at spending it, then we wouldn't mind paying as much.
Is it?
Oh yes, yes. Let's not get into that topic. I'm sure if we don't manage our clients' money the same way as it happens on budget night. So let's get. So there's plenty of tax, as you said, the main areas around that structural and technical side. And then there was a great area of awareness and bringing, what is possible that people don't actually know about.
Yeah, very much so.
Fantastic. And of course, even though, we're not doing a lot of tax advice, it's certainly included in most plans, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly the awareness. I mean, yep, that's right. Clients can go to their accountant or the appropriate advisor for tax advice, but it's really the awareness of what's available and from a allowances perspective. But then when you look at the various structures, it's around understanding what's sitting in each portfolios to maximise those opportunities.
Yep. Yeah, fantastic. Now, this report's fantastic. How can people get a copy of it? What's the best way for them to reach out?
They can download it from the Russell website, which is just really russellinvestments.com.au, or they can contact their local Russell BDM, who'd be more than happy to send it to them. There's also a client version of the report and a whole range of support materials available. And as I said, Fraser, this is something that at Russell we're incredibly proud of in terms of supporting the broader advice community here in Australia.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, I want to talk about that client version, because this is obviously, it's great for financial advisors to know this number, but, the best thing in the world is that clients know about it and consumers know about it. From a marketing point of view, you and I both done work in marketing. How do we get this message out to the broader community of unadvised clients as well?
Well, I think there's a lot everyone can do in that space. We're certainly doing a lot in that space through the publicity of this report. But advisors asking for referrals from their clients, having the conversation to say, well, you can see how I've helped you, how I've articulated my value to you. Do you think there's anyone else that you know of who I may be able to assist in this way? And then there's the whole media piece that around more getting more Australians to get more advice in a more efficient way, and that's everything from us working as an industry collectively to dispel some of the myths that are out there, looking at how regulation works, and then more broadly how we can help advisors become more efficient to deliver more advice in a more cost-effective way to more people.
Yeah, I like the idea of gathering the army together of advisors, all mentioning that 5.2% figure and saying, over your portfolio over a long term, 5.2% better off. It's going to be a lot of money at retirement time.
Oh, without a doubt.
Fantastic, Neil. Thank you so much for catching up today and coming on the podcast and talking about the report. Really look forward to seeing this over the next few years and as it grows and changes and evolves and becoming part of something that planners and advisors throughout the country can access whenever they need it.
Great. Thanks, Fraser. Really appreciate being on today.